Welcome to our channel. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe.
Young girls were hunted and turned into sex slaves. 10 victims would die before investigators captured the serial killer couple behind that crime spree.
I see it every day. I always see it. It never goes away.
Charlene Williams served her time. Well, now CBS 13 has learned that she has returned to our region and is living among us.
Maria Medina sat down exclusively with Charlene, who's opening up now about the murders after years of living a new life.
That's right. Charlene, now in her 50s, is soft-spoken and focused on her future. Ask her about the past, and she has a hard time saying her real name and Gerald Gallego's, the man who had her kidnap girls for his sexual fantasies.
Warning, the following contains images of graphic violence and not suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Gerald Armand Gallego was born on July 17, 1946, in Sacramento, California. His mother was a sex worker, while his estranged father was a criminal who in 1955 became the first man executed in the Mississippi gas chamber for the killing of a police officer during a prison escape. During his formative years, his mother and her multiple boyfriends beat him constantly. Several of her clients even sexually abused him. He often begged to be hugged and was frequently left unclean and hungry. At the age of 10, Gallego was arrested for his first known felony offense, robbing a neighbor's home. This was the start of his criminal career. He had 23 arrests and served prison time after being convicted of robbery prior to his murders. Gallego worked as a bartender and truck driver. He was married a total of 7 times, including 2 marriages to the same woman, but he would often abandon his partners when they ran out of money. When Gerald was 12, he sexually abused a 6-year-old girl, which resulted in him being sentenced to a California Youth Authority facility, and would during his adulthood sexually molest his own daughter as well as one of her friends. He was still married to a previous wife when he married Charlene. Charlene Adele Gallego, née Williams, was born on October 10, 1956, in Stockton, California. She was a smart, shy child from a supportive home. Her father was a well-known businessman who served as the vice president of a chain of supermarkets. As part of their professional lives, he and his wife frequently traveled. After Charlene's mother was severely injured in a car accident, Charlene took over her mother's responsibilities and started accompanying her father on his business travels, where she was frequently lauded by her father's clients for being an educated and articulate youngster. The trajectory of her life began to change when, as a young adult, she started using drugs and alcohol. Because of her overly flirty behavior with her male coworkers, Charlene was despised at work and developed a reputation as a nymphomaniac. Charlene wed a wealthy young man who was addicted to heroin, who asserted that Charlene was desperate for a threesome with him, her, and a prostitute because she was enamored with lesbian sex. The marriage fell apart and they divorced because Charlene's first husband also detested the fact that Charlene's parents interfered in their relationship. Charlene's next husband was a soldier who Charlene described as a mother's boy. She became bored with him and they separated. When Charlene asked whether they might have sex with his wife, the married man with whom she was having an affair ended their relationship quickly. She attempted suicide after the breakup but survived. It was not long after this that she met Gerald. Relationship. On September 10, 1977, Charlene met Gerald at a poker club in Sacramento, California. Within a week of their first encounter, Charlene moved in with Gerald. Charlene acted as the sexually subservient partner in their sadomasochistic relationship. Although Charlene later claimed in court that she detested the painful experience, Gerald engaged in rough intercourse with her and particularly enjoyed sodomizing her. Charlene allegedly became enamored by his machismo and started partaking in his deviant fantasies. Victims: Sandra K. Butler. 16-year-old Sandra K. Butler was last seen in Sparks, Nevada, on June 26, 1978. At 4th and Greenbury Streets, directly across from her family's apartment, she was last seen making her way to the Greenbury Shopping Center. She has not been seen or heard from since. Butler was seen as a probable runaway at the time of her disappearance, and police authorities took minimal action to conduct an investigation and track her down. Authorities believe that Sandra Butler was Charlene and Gerald's first victim. Sandra had been given permission by her mother to ride her bike to the rodeo at the Washoe County Fairgrounds on the day she vanished. It is known that the Gallegos were present there at the fair on that day. Gerald and Charlene were never interviewed then by the police who were investigating Butler's disappearance. Neither ever confessed or were convicted of Sandra's supposed murder. Butler's remains have never been located, and there is suspicion of foul play. 1 year after Sandra disappeared, on June 24, 1979, the Gallegos would kidnap 2 adolescent females from the Washoe County Fairgrounds in Reno, where Sandra was biking to 1 year earlier.
Young girls were hunted and turned into sex slaves. 10 victims would die before investigators captured the serial killer couple behind that crime spree.
I see it every day. I always see it. It never goes away.
Charlene Williams served her time. Well, now CBS 13 has learned that she has returned to our region and is living among us.
Maria Medina sat down exclusively with Charlene, who's opening up now about the murders after years of living a new life.
That's right, Charlene, now in her 50s, is soft-spoken and focused on her future. Ask her about the past, and she has a hard time saying her real name and Gerald Gallego's, the man who had her kidnap girls for his sexual fantasies.
Even after more than 30 years, the memories haven't faded away.
She always had a smile.
And neither, says Hal Sowers,
Mary Beth Sowers,
has the pain of losing his only daughter.
her body found near Loomis.
She's with us every day.
Did you kill Mary Beth?
No, I did not.
But the woman who pleaded guilty to the kidnap and murder of Hal's daughter is talking after years of silence. Mary Beth wasn't the only victim.
I did not kill any of them.
10 of them.
Did you ever want to take part in these killings?
No, for God's sakes, no. No. I never did. I wouldn't be sitting here right now if I did.
Charlene Williams is sticking with the story she told on the stand 3 decades ago. It was all Gerald Gallego, her boyfriend at the time.
He just was sick bastard. I would do anything if I could have stopped him. I know I couldn't have stopped him. I tried to stop him.
Charlene agreed to talk to us if we hid her identity. For the last 15 years, she's lived among us, blending in, living a new life with a new name. She says she changed it to hide from Gallego and his family, fearing for the safety of her family.
And why do you think they would come after you?
I put him on death row. Am I proud of that? Yes, I am.
Gallego died of cancer awaiting his execution. Charlene's confession to the crimes and plea deal earned her a second chance at life. But while she was freed after 17 years behind bars, Charlene says her past keeps her prisoner.
I see it every day. I always see it. It never goes away.
What memory haunts you the most?
There isn't one more than another. There is not one more than another. They're all horrible, horrible memories.
The sexual fantasy of finding the perfect sex slave.
The couple would hunt for many of their victims at Sacramento area malls. Charlene testified in court she was the one who lured girls into their van, where Gerald waited with a gun. The victims, half of them teens, bound, repeatedly raped, murdered, then dumped or buried. Charlene insists she never agreed to Gerald's plans, yet the couple's trail of terror that began in 1978 continued for 2 years, 3 different states, 10 victims, as well as an unborn child. A crime spree dubbed the sex slave murders.
You know, I tried to save some of their lives.
Charlene says Gerald controlled her with fear, threatening to kill her family, raping and abusing her.
People, especially women, will say, well, if you want to get away, you can always get away. It's not that easy. It's not that easy at all.
Why do you think he never killed you?
I don't know, because he sure tried.
But he could have easily killed you.
Very easily.
But many believe Gallego never killed Charlene because she was his partner in crime.
She was just as guilty as he was.
But in 1997, as part of her plea agreement, Charlene was released.
Did you ever wonder whatever happened to her?
Never.
And why is that?
Didn't want to know, really.
All that mattered is Charlene seemed to disappear. Until now.
What if I told you Charlene is living in our area again?
I mean, it's bad enough I have to deal with Mary Beth.
For years and undetected, Charlene's lived in our area. But instead of returning to a life of crime, Charlene says she turned to charity work.
Tell me, how much of your life do you dedicate to charity?
I'd say 100% of my life.
Now more than ever, she says she's dedicated to giving back, especially to the military, after losing a family member to war.
He was a very special person.
Are you trying to make up for your past?
I've always wanted to make up for the past one way or the other. But that is why I'm doing this. It'd be a lie to say that no, that wasn't part of it. Because I'd do anything in the world to make up for it. Anything in the world.
Anything at all about Mary Beth Flowers?
They refused to talk to the FBI.
Charlene never told investigators where she and Gallego dumped Mary Beth. 3 weeks after her disappearance, her body would be found in Placer County. The 21-year-old bound, shot 3 times, still wearing the same dress she wore on her last night alive with her fiancé, Craig Miller, also shot 3 times. Charlene says while she can't undo the past, she's determined to prove she belongs among the very same people who decades ago feared they would be her next victim.
It isn't so much that I really changed. It's just so much that I was finally able to be myself.
Do you think there is a possibility that she has changed her life and she's doing good now?
The answer to that question and Charlene's emotional reaction, plus why Charlene thinks Gallego could be connected to a terrifying unsolved crime spree that left Sacramento County paralyzed in fear. Our CBS 13 exclusive continues this Sunday after the Super Bowl.
Well, there's more. Okay, it'll be very interesting to see.
Thanks, Maria.
Ronda Scheffler and Kippy Vaught. 2 adolescents, Kippy Vaught, 16, and Ronda Scheffler, 17, vanished from a Sacramento mall on September 10, 1978. Charlene tricked them into going to the back of the couple's van as they were both shopping at Sacramento's Country Club Plaza, where the pair then kidnapped them. The girls were restrained by Gerald after he threatened them with a firearm. The 2 victims were then repeatedly assaulted by him all through the night in Baxter, California. The following day, Gerald and Charlene drove to Slow House, California, where Gerald ordered Scheffler and Vaught out of the van. Then, after forcing them to cross a field to a ditch, he struck Vaught with a tire iron before swinging around and beating Scheffler. Finally, he pulled out a .25 caliber pistol and shot each girl once in the head. Vaught moved and made an attempt to flee as Gerald was leaving, because the gunshot had only lightly grazed her skull. She was killed when he went back and fired 3 more shots into her head. Charlene would later tell a cellmate how ecstatic she felt during this particular crime. Brenda Judd and Sandra Colley. On June 24, 1979, 14-year-old Brenda Judd and 13-year-old Sandra Colley were abducted from the Washoe County Fair in Reno, Nevada. Both were persuaded to enter the Gallegos van with the promise of earning money by distributing flyers. On Interstate 80, Charlene took the van northeast of Reno, and as she watched in the rearview mirror, Gerald repeatedly sexually assaulted the 2 young girls in the back of the van. Charlene then parked their van in the remote Humboldt Sink area. Over the next couple of hours, Gerald rested and watched Charlene force the girls to perform sexual acts on each other. Colley was then dragged towards a dry stream bed by Gerald after he removed a shovel from under their van's seat and yanked her out of the car. He then crept up behind Colley and repeatedly struck her in the head with a shovel, Charlene would later recall in court the assault, describing it as a loud splat like a flat rock hitting mud, and the girl sank to her knees and slowly toppled over on her face. After killing Judd, Gerald dug a large pit, placed the two girls' naked bodies inside of it, and covered it with a rock. The teenagers were listed as runaways for 4 years until Charlene confessed to their murders during the 1982 trial. Their remains were not found and identified until 20 years later in November 1999 by a tractor operator. Stacy and Redican and Karen Chipman Twiggs. On the morning of April 24, 1980, Gerald awoke Charlene and demanded, "I want a girl. Get up." After some time spent driving around, he came upon two teenage girls exiting a bookstore, Stacy and Redican and Karen Chipman Twiggs, both 17-year-olds. On the pretext of smoking some marijuana, Charlene approached the two females and invited them to travel with her in the van. She led the girls back to the van after they enthusiastically concurred. Gerald met the girls with a .357 Magnum pistol as they entered the back of the van. He quickly commanded Charlene to drive and ordered the girls to undress. Gerald took turns raping and sexually assaulting them. After he finished, he again had Charlene drive to a secluded area and led the girls one at a time into the woods carrying a hammer and a shovel. However, this time he forced Charlene to view the graves. She claimed that she saw movement, but Gerald insisted that both girls were dead. They then left. On July 27, 1980, picnickers discovered the coyote-ravaged remains of Karen and Stacy in two shallow graves in an area 20 miles outside of Lovelock, Nevada. They had both been raped and suffered massive and fatal head injuries by a blunt instrument. Linda Teresa Aguilar. While hitchhiking on June 6, 1980, in Port Orford, Oregon, 21-year-old Linda Teresa Aguilar was abducted, murdered with a blunt object, and buried in a shallow grave. Aguilar had accepted the Gallegos' offer of a ride and was traveling with them in their van until Gerald threatened Aguilar with a .357 caliber revolver while Charlene was driving. Aguilar was 4 months pregnant and relatives reported her missing on June 20. German tourists found her body 2 days later. The victim's wrists and ankles were bound with nylon cord, and her skull was broken, but an examination revealed that she had been buried alive since sand had been found in her mouth, throat, and nose. Virginia Machel. On July 17, 1980, 31-year-old Virginia Machel was abducted from the parking lot of a West Sacramento tavern, where she worked as a bartender. Gerald and Charlene were acquainted with Machel and had frequently been served drinks by her. Virginia was sexually assaulted by Gerald, who then forced her to beg for her life. After killing her by strangulation, he discarded her body by a pond. Her skeletal remains, still bound with nylon fishing line, were found 3 months later outside of Clarksburg. Loops of cord from the victim's neck were admitted as proof of death by strangulation. Craig Miller and Mary Elizabeth Sowers. While leaving a fraternity party on November 1, 1980, 22-year-old Craig Miller and his fiancée, 21-year-old Mary Elizabeth Sowers, were forced into the Gallegos' car. Miller and Sowers were seen by the Gallegos standing by the side of the road. Gerald then ordered the two to get into the automobile after getting out of the vehicle and approaching them directly while brandishing a .25 caliber Beretta. After taking them to a remote location, Gerald ordered Craig out of the car. As he turned to approach the front of the car, Gerald pointed his pistol at Miller and shot him in the back of the head while his fiancée watched. Gerald then fired 2 more shots into Craig's head. As he lay lifeless on the ground, his body would later be found near Bass Lake, California. Gerald got back into the vehicle and ordered Charlene to drive to their apartment. Once back at the apartment, Gerald took Sowers into the bedroom and raped her for hours. Afterward, he ordered Charlene to drive to a rural area in Placer County, California. Once there, Gerald ordered Mary out of the car. He then shot her 3 times at point-blank range. Capture and trial. A friend of Miller and Sowers witnessed their abduction and reported the car's license plate number. Police used this information to track down and arrest the Gallegos at a Western Union office. Charlene's parents were in the process of wiring her money. Gerald and Charlene pleaded not guilty to charges of kidnapping and murder. Charlene's attorneys were eventually able to convince prosecutors in several states and counties to allow Charlene to testify against Gerald for a plea deal that reduced her prison sentence to 16 years and 8 months. In June 1983, Gerald was sentenced to death in California for the murders of Mary Beth Sowers and Craig Miller. In June 1984, Gerald was convicted in Nevada for the murders of Karen Twiggs and Stacy Redican, and subsequently sentenced to death. The Nevada death sentence was overturned in 1997. In July 1997, Charlene completed her sentence and was released. While in prison, she extensively studied psychology, business, and Icelandic literature. During an interview, Charlene claimed that she was also a victim when she said, "There were victims who died, and there were victims who lived. It's taken me a hell of a long time to realize that I'm one of the ones who lived." She also claimed that she tried to save some of their lives. On July 18, 2002, Gerald Gallego died of cancer in a Nevada prison medical center while awaiting execution.